This is St Andrews, South Brisbane. Today's sermon is a tale of three kings, but they may not be the kings you're expecting. Please turn to page 966 in the Church Bibles, where you'll find Matthew chapter 2. Matthew 2 begins, "After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the reign of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem." Herod is the first king out of the three. He was a Jewish king based in Jerusalem who ruled under the authority of the Roman Empire. The Magi came to Jerusalem, where Herod was, and asked, verse 2, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." I have done some stupid things in my time. Sometimes there were things that sort of made sense when looked at from one angle, but really didn't make sense when looked at from a better point of view. If you're looking for the King of the Jews, in some ways, Herod's palace in Jerusalem is an obvious door to knock on. Herod was King of the Jews. Yet, what do they appear to be asking? Where is your replacement? We're told that when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, verse 3. Or there's a translation that describes him as being greatly agitated. I can understand why he would be, looking at it from one point of view. This town ain't big enough for two kings, and all Jerusalem was with him in this because, well, with the local boss greatly agitated, who knows what might happen. But now comes what for me is one of the most startling parts of the tale. Verse 4. "When Herod had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born." Herod has joined the dots. King of the Jews plus a star equals the Christ, the Messiah. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. Numbers 24:17. The Jews had been waiting for the Messiah. They should have welcomed him. And on the one hand, Herod appears to fit in with this. Verse 8. "He sent the Magi to Bethlehem and said, 'Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him.'" This makes perfect sense. If Jesus is the Messiah, then he is to be welcomed. He is to be worshipped, even by kings, because Jesus is a king in his own right. Indeed, Jesus is the King of kings and Lord of lords. The wise men follow through on this. Verse 11. "On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him." But we know what's really going on with Herod. It's perhaps intimated in verse 7, when we're told that he called the Magi secretly. Why secretly? In verse 12 we read, "And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. And in verse 16, we find out why. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. I said I was startled by Herod, and I am. His intent in dispatching the wise men to Bethlehem was not to find the child so that he too may go and worship him, as he said, but rather he wanted the child, Jesus, found so that he might be killed. And the reason for this was because he was the Messiah. That was why Herod wanted him dead. This makes no sense to me. I can't get my head around it. It's like saying, I know Jesus is God, but if Jesus is God, which he is, there can be only one logical, correct response: worship and obedience. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Bow down before him, his glory proclaim, gold of obedience and incense of lowliness. Bring and adore him. The Lord is his name. I said this sermon was to be a tale of 3 kings. We've had 2 so far: King Herod and King Jesus. Where is the 3rd king to be found? I found Matthias Media's 2 Ways to Live helpful as a gospel presentation. It has 6 stages to it. The second is labelled Our Rebellion Against God. The illustration has a circle representing the world, surmounted by a crown representing God's sovereignty. But the crown is crossed out. That's our rebellion. There's also a representation of a person with a smaller crown over himself. Perhaps this is something we can relate to at this time of year, with paper crowns from Christmas bonbon crackers. I'm my own king. I do things my own way. The final illustration shows the 2 ways to live. We have a choice, each one of us. Do you keep wearing your puny paper crown, the crown of your rebellion against God, one that won't last, won't even protect you from the rain? Or do you accept the kingship of Jesus? It's a choice that has to be made. It's one or the other. I'm my own king, or Jesus is my king, and I submit my life to him. Herod made his choice, and more fool him for doing so. The Magi made their choice, and they were wise in doing so. They bowed down and worshipped Jesus. What of you? Where do you stand before King Jesus? Are you standing or kneeling? Herod represents worldly power and the tragic choice to reject the true King, Jesus, out of fear and self-preservation. In King Herod's misguided attempt to eliminate a perceived threat, he reveals the folly of resisting the authority of the King of Kings. The Magi, guided by a divine star, embody wisdom and humility. They recognize the significance of Jesus and willingly bow down to worship him acknowledging his rightful kingship? Will you persist in wearing a flimsy, self-made crown of rebellion? Or will you humbly submit to the kingship of Jesus? The Magi's wise decision serves as a timeless reminder that true wisdom lies in surrendering to the reign of the ultimate King, Jesus Christ, whose lordship invites us not to stand in defiance, but rather to kneel in reverent adoration. May we all find ourselves kneeling before the King of Kings, embracing his reign with hearts filled with worship and obedience. Amen.
Songs of